For the Tuesday, April 22nd, Brooklyn City Board of Education special meeting, Mr. Shearhart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Neal.
Here.
Mr. Hubble.
Here.
Ms. Rafter.
Here.
Mr. Hazruni.
Here.
Ms. Crawl.
Here, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hand it over to Dr. Blair.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening to the board, to our community in the audience, and to anybody watching at home. Just quickly, we will have this information in this board meeting posted on our district Facebook page tomorrow. So for those of you not able to watch it this evening, we'll have this information posted for everybody to view. So today really is a special opportunity for myself, Mr. Shearhart, Board of Education, to update our community regarding district finances and any information, factual information regarding the upcoming May 6th issue 19 renewal levy. I always have to start with a disclaimer of facts that the information being provided here is merely factual. District personnel are not allowed to advocate for or against the passage of a levy during times they are being compensated by the district. So really today is just a factual presentation in terms of our district finances. Both Rob and I, Mr. Shear and I, will tag team this presentation. I'll start and then I will give it off to Mr. Shearhart. After that, we will open it up to public participation and questions from the board and any questions from our community in the audience. Just from a standard or standpoint from a financing standpoint, Brooklyn City School District receives a little over $1,990 per student for the district from the state of Ohio. These are actual voucher numbers from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 24. They have not obviously posted fiscal year 25 data, but you can see from fiscal year 23 to 24, there was a 58.8% increase in Brooklyn residents sending their students to schools that accept the voucher. Now, that doesn't mean we necessarily lost 149 students last year, but those students live in the city of Brooklyn that were taking voucher dollars. The voucher dollars that each of them receive is on a sliding scale up to about $88,000 per student, depending on the school they attend. You can see in Cuyahoga County, and these are just Cuyahoga County statistics from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, there was about a 320% increase in residents in Cuyahoga County taking advantage of the voucher program. Okay? Looking at the proposed state biennium budget, we don't know a lot right now regarding what the proposal looks like from an impact for Brooklyn City Schools. What we do know is that in both the governor's budget and the House budget, the state legislature has discontinued the fair funding formula. Going back a little bit historically, fair funding formula was done 4 years ago now. It was a bipartisan effort to try to really look at how school districts, public school districts, were funded. Came together, wasn't perfect by any means, but it was definitely a good middle of the road approach to public school funding. And again, remember, that's as a result of the DeRolf case way back when, saying that the state funding formula and how public schools were financed was unconstitutional. That being said, the Senate is scheduled to meet in the next 2 weeks, the week of the 28th, in terms of what their proposal will look like. Once the Senate releases their budget, then the Senate and the House begin having conversations in terms of what they would recommend to the governor. The governor would then sign a budget into law by the end of June. Okay. Any questions on that before I move forward on that budget process? We really won't know what the impact on Brooklyn is probably until middle of June, to be honest. Mr. Neal?
Yep. The sliding scale of 8,000 or whatever
Yeah.
the number is, that comes directly out of the general fund prior to us getting the money, prior to it.
It does
Where is
not,
that?
no, it does not,
Okay.
no,
We don't
that's,
see that. That comes directly from that's the state share that goes to the voucher programs.
Okay.
so the voucher program is, so the state has decided to fund the vouchers in one pot of money, approximately $1 billion. The public schools is a pot of money. Those pots of money don't necessarily mix, but it's that allocation of that private school, those private school
Make sure
vouchers.
everybody knew that.
Yeah,
And I can tell you that last year, the voucher budget was $800 million. This year for '25, it was over $1 billion.
now what
They've
I,
Say that
increased
again?
it was $800 million last year, and this year they've increased it to over $1 billion.
With the B, right?
Yes.
That's a new number now.
Yeah.
yeah. I will tell you, in the House budget, they have, and I can't speak to what the governor proposed with regards to vouchers, but in the House budget proposal, Sub Bill 96, I believe there was an additional allocation of about $500 million to the voucher program. I think the allocation in the House budget was about $200 million on the public side of things. So publics were being funded an additional $200 million, voucher proposal another $500 million. Okay. I talk about our bond issue because I think the bond issue is a very important determination in terms of this is the scope of work that we have approved. It really goes towards the infrastructure and upgrades of our infrastructure, of our facilities. Bond issue money cannot be used for operations, staffing, extracurricular, co-curricular programs, curriculum, supplies, any of those things. The bond issue funds can only be used for items directly related to our renovation project. This is just a reminder here, and I don't need to read to everybody what those costs are, but it was about a 2.96 mil levy, and that was the general cost for homeowner on a $100,000, $125,000, $150,000, and $200,000 home regarding that bond issue. I think talking about the bond issue relative to finances, it's very important, and I said this at the State of the Schools, and I want to say it again here this evening. How thankful we are as a school district that the city of Brooklyn, city council, and the mayor have decided to waive those permit fees. The last bond issue with the pre-K through 7 was approximately about a $250,000 cost to the district at that time. City of Brooklyn, City Council waived those fees this time for this project. So that's saving us about $200,000 that we can directly put back into the project. So from a financing standpoint, this allows us to complete some projects, parts of projects that we may not have been able to do previously. So again, a thank you to the city for their partnership and the city council for their partnership on waiving of the current fees for the current bond issue. And they also did that last year when we renovated the high school restrooms. I think it's always important to talk about the things we do as an administrative team to bring funds and finances into the district. School districts are limited on how they can and actively advocate to bring in funds to the district. Two examples that really stand out for us is that NFL grassroots grant that we received this past summer. And again, I'll say it again, kudos to and thank you to Mr. Neal, who on a whim had a conversation with me and said, "Hey, Ted, have you thought about applying?" I said, sure. Sure enough, we got the grant. That's a $250,000 savings towards that field project. Now remember, this field project is not a part of the bond issue. This is strictly coming out of the grant fund and the money we had saved and budgeted from the general fund to pay for that project. Another grant that we applied for last year and received was the Ohio Career Technical Education Equipment Grant. This was in partnership with Polaris Career Center, who we had to have a sponsor and had some assistance in that grant. They were partners with us in that project. We received a $266,000 grant, of which about $150,000 went to the renovation and kind of that refresh of our high school computer lab, about 150, and then the remaining went towards some programming and training and some other resources that we were going to actively put into our high school program study. So we have two other grants, I don't want to jinx it, that we've applied for, hoping that at some point we'll get word on what those grants. But again, always important for us to continuously, actively look for grant funds that will ultimately benefit our general fund, because the money we receive from these two grants directly offset and help us in our general fund. Questions before I turn it over to Mr. Shearhart? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Just wanted to start out by going over what some of the local revenue sources are for the district. All of this money that's on this screen generates funds for the general fund, which is general operating. It pays salaries, benefits, and all that. So the renewal that's up on May 6th is actually the center one in green. That's a current expense. That was actually first approved by the voters in 2019. It carries through the end of 2025. So that's why it's going to be on the ballot in May. Currently, it was voted at 6 mills, and it brings in $1.7 million for the district. So this slide shows the valuation for calendar year '24, which was $389,036,380, and that's for that's the value of the whole district, of all the properties in the whole district. With the reappraisal this year, the property value went up to $432 million, and the change in the value was $293,000. Our current collection rate is at 96.8%. So basically the increase that the district would have seen would have been about $283,000. Next, I want to talk about the different types of levies. The first type of levy is what's called inside millage. That's set by law, and what that is it's 10 mills, and that's spread out between the district. School districts get a piece of it, the city gets a piece of it, and then the county gets a piece of it. So currently for Brooklyn, it's at 4.6 mills. The impact that it moves in proportion to the value. So if the value goes up, that millage stays the same and brings in a little bit more. Really the biggest increase for the inside millage would be construction, because that would be hitting the duplicate for the first time. So that millage would bring in more. We have fixed sum levies, which are voted, and those are bond and emergency levies. Those are set for a specific dollar amount. Those, as the values increase, the amount that it brings in is decreased based on the effective millage on that as well. So as the rate, it's set to produce a specific dollar amount. The other is a fixed rate levy, which those are approved also, and those are current expense levies and things like that. So as the value in the district increases, that rate is also reduced based on the effective millage to keep the same dollar amount coming in. That's basically what the renewal levy is going to be. It's a fixed rate levy. So as the values, the property values go up, the effective millage comes down. And I have an example that I'll go over on the next slide to bring in the same dollar amount. And that was due to House Bill 920. It was passed in 1976. What that does is that capped the inflationary increases on property values. So they saw that as property values were going up, districts back then were making more money. So the legislature put House Bill 920 in place to curb that, so districts weren't getting what's called a windfall. So here we have an example of, and this is basically what the renewal levy will be. So the assessed value of a $100,000 house is $35,000, and all houses are based on that. So whatever your market value is, you multiply it by 35%, and then that's the value the county auditor uses for the millage to figure out how much they charge. So the assessed value for a $100,000 house is $35,000, and then the effective rate, and this would be at the time it's voted in, would be 6 mills, and that tax would bring in $210, a half, sorry. If the house were to go up $10,000, or a 10% increase, so you can see the new value would be $110,000, multiplied by the 35%, the new value on the house is $38,500. Then, in order to get to still bring in the $210, the county auditor would reduce the effective tax rate, the millage, down to 5.45. That way, it's still bringing in the same dollar amount. So on the bottom, and the analysis, you can see the change in value of the house went up 10%. There was no change in the tax, and the tax rate actually decreased by 9.2%. Okay. So this is some factual information for the issue 19 for the renewal levy that's on the ballot. If passed, it would generate approximately $1.7 million. It would not raise taxes because it's a renewal. Like I just went over, the effective rate is adjusted down, so it would stay the same. Community passed a 20 mil bond issue back in March of last year. Those funds can only be used, again, for the renovations. They cannot be used for any of the operating. Yeah, and if the levy passes, the renewal passes, that money would be used for operations for the district. And then, if any questions or comments or anything, here's Dr. Claris's and my emails. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. And that's the end of the presentation.
Sure, quick question. Just from a presentation standpoint, obviously, when I think one of the reasons for our financial success in the district is because of a lot of our partnerships with and business opportunities within the city. I think the city's done an amazing job with attracting businesses to the city limits, and which obviously directly impact us in different ways. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between kind of the class 1 and class 2, and this levy is also, I guess my point is, not just a impact on our homeowners, our residents, it's also an impact on our businesses. Can you talk a little bit about some of that clarity? And again, also taking the point that, we're great partners with our city. We love the opportunity to come into the city. I think that's been a direct benefit of attracting businesses in the community. Would you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so the breakdown by the county auditors, Class 1 is residential and agricultural. Brooklyn does not have any agricultural, it's all residential. The Class 2 is commercial and industrial. Currently, Brooklyn is roughly about a 48-52 split. So about 48% of the district is Class 1 or residential. And then 52% is the commercial and industrial. One of the things that's important with this levy is the Class 2 or the commercial and industrial, they are at 24 mills. Now the district, with the valuation this year, the reevaluation, the district has, the effective millage has dropped below the 20 mil floor. And that's actually the state law that they put in place because of House Bill 19 with the inflationary. Districts were losing money and were not being able to operate, so they put the 20 mil floor in place to allow that to adjust it back up so the districts would get the money that they need to run. By doing that, once you drop below the 20 mils, the county auditor automatically has to, by law, bump the district back up, well, the taxing authority back up, because it works with the city as well. So with the renewal levy, the district is, the Class 1 is actually below, a little bit below the 20 mil floor. So with the renewal, if the renewal were to pass, taxpayers would pay the same amount of money. The businesses, the Class 2, would pay the same too. If the renewal levy were to fail, the Class 1 would automatically bump back up, and that would pay the same amount. The Class 2 or commercial and residential, or I'm sorry, commercial and industrial would actually not pay because that levy would come off. So if that were the case, the district would lose about $740,000 on the Class 2. So it would be about $740,000 that the district would lose on the Class 2 for that.
That's on an annual basis going forward?
Yes. Once it drops off, it's gone forever unless you end up doing a new levy. Like this renewal, we have it on in May. If we needed to put it back on, we could put it back on in November. If it did not go through in November, it would automatically come off in January.
Yep.
In order to make that up, we would have to go back to the community for a new levy for new money to make up for that difference.
So no new money for our residents, no increase, additional.
Yes, there is no additional tax.
Rob, one of the things that I have, that we always have conversations with our board about, and I just wanted to really kind of bring this up from a standpoint is really our budgeting process and how over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, school districts are required to submit 5-year forecasts twice a year. And really the intent of a 5-year forecast for our community is so that we're taking a hard look at our books, so to speak, and determining where we are from a financial, a positive financial standpoint. Based on our last 5-year forecast, we are really not gonna, we have a small deficit spending in 2027 fiscal year, but really in 2028, we really see a deficit spending a little bit more significant. Can you talk a little bit about our budgeting process and really I think the point is how we go through our budgeting process and how we really take a look at what we spend and how and why we spend it related to our finances.
Yeah, one of the things that we do is we sit down with the administrators, Ted and I, and what we do is go through everything. it's not zero-based budgeting. We don't start them from zero and go up. I refer to it as a hybrid. We take them to a certain point, and then we ask them to kind of show why they would need additional funds for additional things that may go on that year.
I would say too, like, part of those, I mean, outside of the personnel costs, I mean, obviously, we take a hard look at classroom sizes, and we take a hard look at our staffing. That's always a big piece of our budget. But we really look at, from an initiative standpoint, you know, the things we're budgeting for, do they relate to our strategic plan, and making sure that those are purposeful purchases. I'll give Rob credit, like, he, at some point this spring, he's told you know, we're gonna cut off, you know, purchase requests for this year, moving into next year, because we wanna make sure that anything purchased this spring is for this spring. It's not necessarily like, oh, I just wanna spend the money to spend the money. No, like, it goes through a process of if there's a request, it has to be purposely in the budget for this year, where if we're gonna budget for new items, that has to come, you know, effective July 1st. So I just really wanted to bring the point that, you know, budgeting is very purposeful for us, is a big part of what we do. We're actually starting those meetings tomorrow with departments and buildings in terms of talking about the budget and what does that look like. You know, obviously making sure that our kids and our staff and our families have what they need, but also to make sure that it's purposeful, knowing that finances are always a sensitive topic, especially around a potential renewal levy time. Rob, real quick question. I just want to kind of go back to this slide here. Assuming the levy passes this May, the renewal levy, no new tax levy, when would be the next time that the community could potentially consider another renewal levy on the books?
27.
27.
Yeah.
So I think part of this is also saying that you know, with the current schedule here, and assuming that the board decides to consider the emergency levies scheduled for 27 and then 29, there would be no need for new operating money in the district, assuming that these schedules stay forward. So I just wanted to kind of bring up, I think, you know, the board's done a good job. Our predecessors have done a nice job in terms of setting up some of these levies, but they're based on the current standard, the current schedule. There is no need for new additional money based on what we see from a financial standpoint. Rob, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
So at least for 4 years.
I'm sorry?
For at least 4 years, we don't have to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Again, depending on what happens in
state
Columbus, but yes.
Based on our current
If-
forecast?
Yes, if everything stays
Yeah,
the
and
same.
again, I mean, I think that's the unknowns that sometimes our curveballs are thrown our way, but everybody's in those similar situations, and so I think from the last board meeting, I said, you know, I feel more comfortable with having, you know, making those determinations once we really know what's going on. I will say, and I want to say this publicly too, since the last board meeting, a Zoom meeting has been set up with Senator Patton, with Brooklyn, Strongsville, Berea, North Homestead, and I believe there's one more district in there, to talk to Senator Patton regarding the proposed Senate budget. So that's a positive stance. So I do want to give Senator Patton some credit with regards to being open to the conversation with school districts on what potential budget implications could be for the district. But again, not related to really the renewal levy, but I did want to mention to the board that that's a bit of positive news for us. Before we go into public participation, are there any other questions, comments that myself or Rob could answer from the board regarding district finances or the renewal levy, anything like that, or the bond issue, to be honest with
So
you.
I just want to, I'm going to say something and just follow with me, make sure I'm being clear. So last week, we passed the resolution to save
tax rates.
the tax rates for the millage, which saved the taxpayers $2.4 million. This renewal is for $1.7 million. So essentially, if passed, we essentially saved the taxpayers $700,000 roughly, and we get to continue operating with our money. And then, again, just to reiterate, if this levy does fail, we will lose $740,000.
Yes.
Okay. So just wanted to, put it out there in public that with the last week's vote and not passing the next levy, it's not in your best interest to do it.
Well, and to take it a step further, the only people that will benefit with the loss would be the businesses, the class 2.
Which we appreciate, but
Right.
fair share, so.
Just clarification too, just like with if the levy does not pass in May, then the board would, I think Rob and I's recommendation would be for the board to put it back up in November. And so I think that would be a consideration. Again, we haven't really talked specifically about it, but knowing our short conversations on it, I believe we would recommend to the board to put it up for November, and then if November, so the tax implications would, if it failed again in November, then that's where we would see the loss of revenue starting January 1. We still have one more opportunity for the board to put it up and for the community to consider that levy in November. So that's just clarification.
Right, anytime there's passage or non-passage of any levy, it does not start until the following tax year. So if we pass it now, it's not gonna matter. If it fails, we will put it on in November. If it fails in November, then the effect would hit us January of '26.
And I will too go back, and obviously I think the tax evaluations, the new ones that we have seen here in the Brooklyn, apologize, go back here real quick. So obviously, they're obviously if you look at calendar year '24 and calendar year '25, those reappraised evaluations went up pretty significantly. But if I go to that column all the way to the end, Brooklyn City School District did not receive a windfall as a result of those increased tax evaluations. So I want to make sure that the narrative out there is that the taxes went up, Brooklyn received this big windfall, and now we're asking for more money. That's not the case. You can see we received about $283,000 or so as a result, annually, as a result of those increased tax evaluations, right? And I know the state legislature, both Senate side and House side, have talked about how they're going to address property taxes in the future. I think that's a multi-layered problem that is going to take lots of smart people to figure out, in terms of what that relief would look like. But understand that we have not seen the windfall as a result of those new evaluations that have hit our homeowners. Any other questions that I could answer from the Board of Education or Rob?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
In order for the board to fulfill its obligations to complete the planned agenda in an effective and efficient fashion, a maximum of 30 minutes of public participation as it pertains to school-related topics will be permitted at each meeting. Each person wishing to address the board will approach the podium and state his or her name and address. If several people wish to speak, each person will be allotted 3 minutes until the total time of 30 minutes is used. During that period, no person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have had the opportunity to do so. The period of public participation may be extended by a vote of the majority of the board. Okay, thank you. Then, if there's no other questions or comments, then I would motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Shearhart, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Mr. Ezra?
Yes.
Mr. Hubble?
Yes.
Ms. Rafter?
Yes.
Ms. Crawl?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.